So now let's move forward. Now we have a round table of our colleagues and friends from Brazil, and they want to discuss the topic of informational fields. So let's connect them and let's see how it will be.
So, hi everybody. I don't know if you're listening to me well. Could anyone confirm?
Yes,
We can listen to you very well.
Okay, perfect. So let's start. First of all, it's a great honor for me and my friends. I'll ask each one of them to present themselves to be here with you today after this wonderful presentation of Line McTaggart. Really outstanding in so many aspects of her work, not only in terms of research, but also in practical applications. So this really captures the spirit of what we are trying to do, and we'll present some of this work for you today. Well, first of all, I would like to make a few great thanks to our friend Konstantin Korotkov for the invitation to take part in this and the opportunity to take part in this Congress. He's been supporting our research since 2015, and it's really a great honor to be on this road together with our friends in Russia and in so many parts of the world. I've been personally a few times in CIS Congress in Russia personally, and it's really it would be really nice this year. I was telling that to Dimitri to being able to go in the flash, but owing to this international impossibility of moving in a free way, we are online. I know it's not the same thing. We do not have the same impact as we are together. We can share experiences, drink a coffee together, but that's what we have for today. So let's go. Today in this roundtable, there'll be me and two great Brazilian researchers. As I said, I'll let them present themselves. PhD Ricardo Ghelman from CAPCIM, which is a consortium of more than 300 universities. He'll explain it better. My great colleague, Professor José Pissolato Filho from Unicamp, State University of Campinas, in the state of São Paulo. It's one of the greatest universities in Brazil. And myself, I'm the president of Orient, which is an institute of research, education, and practical applications. I'm also a PhD in psychology and electrical engineering. Well, basically, I translated here these aspects of our institute, which is Orient. It's a science, knowledge, and light. So we definitely understand that science is very important to life, to generate important knowledge for life. And if this knowledge is really connected to life, it will bring to our lives enlightenment. So this is basically the triad of motions that we propose with this association. Its name comes from Greek Orion, which also is connected with the stars, Orion, Orionte, which means last frontiers. So how far can human consciousness go, human knowledge, how far can it take us? So this is the challenge that we accepted for this association. Well, today we're going to speak a little bit of science, some of the activities that we've been doing in science, and specifically there is a central research hypothesis over which we have been working in the last, at least since 2004. This regards information fields and the role of information. But in simple words, when we talk of information fields, it's a general hypothesis to explain what we in the common life call the interconnectedness of the universe. So the fact that everything, everybody is connected, as we've seen in Line McTaggart's presentation. And typically, as is presupposed in so many applications in healthcare, in management, and so on. So basically, what could explain this interconnectedness of the universe? So this is the general hypothesis we've been working on in physical terms, but also in applied terms. So this has to do basically with knowledge. So what we're gonna see at the beginning is that this question about what is reality is a very old question. It's been around for millennium, and there are some approaches to these to explain these general questions in philosophy and also in science or in physics, being more specifically. So first, let's run a little bit on what are these general approaches to these questions on what is reality in terms of philosophical research. So basically, this is the first approach to the problem, which says that the object has certain real and concrete properties, which we get to know. So this approach is called physicalistic objectivism. So the subject, it's capable somehow to penetrate and to understand, to get to know these concrete properties of objects of reality. The second great approach is called transcendental subjectivism, and it starts with Plato. So this first approach starts with Aristotle, and it goes on. And the second approach, transcendental subjectivism, starts with Plato and goes on with great philosophers like Kant, for instance. So knowledge is constituted in a subject from an innate categories and operations that happen in the subject. So knowledge has nothing to do with the object, but has everything to do with the subject of knowledge. So this is the second approach. A third approach started in the ends of the 19th century with a mathematician called Edmund Husserl, and then it developed in the entire 20th century. It's called phenomenology. So according to phenomenology, the relation between subject and object, the only thing we can do is to describe how we know, how the process of knowledge happens. So we cannot affirm with certainty that we know reality as such, but we can describe how we get to know. So this has to do with intentionality of consciousness. So this is the philosopher that brought about the thematics of consciousness and its constitution for the first time in the history of philosophy. And last but not least, we have another proposal which has been born in the 20th century, which says basically that between subject and object, there is a lively, dynamic, variable interaction, which we call information field or semantic field, or some authors also called morphogenetic fields, and so on. So there are many, many theories to explain this lively, dynamic, variable interaction, which causes reciprocal variations. So both subject and object suffer a variation during this physical impact, allowing a reversible knowledge. So the subject gets to know the object because of the oneness of this involucrum we call universe. So this is a proposition of many current schools, but in terms of psychology and philosophy, it's a proposition made by ontopsychology. Well, how this worldview, this last worldview of interconnectedness is supported in science. It's very important to choose a starting point here. So as the story is very long, in physical terms, I will start with Albert Einstein. According to his theory of general relativity, we were all led to this new idea of a kind of block universe. So the universe could not be somehow divided. From another perspective, in 1925, this year is very important for physics because Werner Heisenberg published with Max Born and Pascual Jordan the mathematical foundations of quantum mechanics in this article which is called Zur Quantenmechanik 2. So after he published this article, a real mass, not to say a real revolution, started to happen in the core of physics and in the core of what we thought we understood of reality. Basically, Heisenberg's idea is that by measuring a system, we impact that system. And therefore, we humans are co-creators of our reality because we change it while we try to know it. This was a whole new way of looking at things and a new, absolutely new paradigm shift in theoretical physics that changed the way we saw things from that point on. In 1927, there's another important chapter in this story, which is the so famous God plays or not dice with the universe. So there was this conference, Solvay conference, where physicists tried to conciliate these two major approaches. So the theory of general relativity, which was by then the mainstream idea to explain, and the search of a single set of universal rules and laws that govern the universe, and from another perspective, the new way of doing physics, which was the quantum physics. And these two approaches had to be conciliated, but it seemed then that it would be really impossible to reconcile them. Here we put this small joke. So God does not play dice, and it said that Niels Bohr answered, "It's not our business to say how God should govern the universe." So basically, we should abstract, we should forget our beliefs if you want to be epistemological neutral and find the core of what we call reality. In 1935, there was another important shift in this process. So Einstein himself wrote a very famous article with Podolsky and Rosen, where he proposed an experimental, idealistic experiment in which basically this phenomenon, which was then named entanglement, could happen. And the fact that the entanglement could happen would be an absurd, would be a kind of spooky action at a distance. So basically, two particles that were interconnected in a quantum level, they could interact instantly at any distance. And according to Albert Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, at the end of the article, they arrive at a conclusion that either quantum physics was incomplete or it was absolutely wrong, because of course, so to say, between quotes, it couldn't be possible, this known locality phenomenon to happen. It would break one of the groundings of physical beliefs, basically that locality principle could not be breaking. Well, here we have chosen this very important author, David Bohm, which is probably one of the most interesting physicists after all these great names that we have mentioned, that really tried in a very serious manner to reconcile both general relativity and quantum physics. I quote him directly. He said, "It's not actually possible to analyze the world into particles. What we call particles behave like waves or something in between, according to the circumstance. These particles are not predictable, nor they have the properties that mechanical particles ought to have. When many of them get together, they have properties of a whole, which cannot be analyzed through the parts. This is what quantum mechanics says. Relativity also says, in another sense, the universe cannot be divided, the so-called block universe theory. In spite of that, physicists insist in finding the ultimate building blocks of the universe." So basically what David Bohm proposes is an inversion in the way we analyze things. And he captures that the very essence of the structure of the unitary universe of this wholeness is non-local, and that what we call locality is just a specific, one specific application, one specific aspect of reality, but that non-locality would be the basic rule governing the laws of the universe. So as a matter of fact, everything would be interconnected in this wholeness. And he mathematically proposed a very advanced model, and he's uh, maybe one of these most famous ideas are the pilot waves, which are kind of guide waves to the particles, where the particles should be. So using David Bohm's models, what basically we arrive at is the conclusion that the so-called indetermination principle, it falls. So when you know the precise position, the starting position of a particle on a system, you can predict precisely what will be the velocity and its position in a future situation using his mathematical modeling. But he was deeply criticized at his time. He lived part of his life also in Brazil. There was this great movie I dedicated to his ideas and the story of his life, Infinite Potential, which was recently released. I think it's last year was released. So really very interesting to see it because it's explained in more detail what I'm just presenting here very, very quickly. Well, the story goes on. I'll have to make it short. And then quantum entanglement from a challenge and an absurd from this so-called spooky action of a distance became something very of great interest in the last decades of research for researchers, owing to its absolutely new application. So it's today a phenomenon which has been proved many times with uh, a level of security, very high level of security, statistical security. And the applications are as advanced as teletransportation. As we see here in this article published by Science in 2018 about teletransportation. Anton Zeilinger also has a series of experiments and applications in teletransportation, encryption, that is unbreakable encryption. So systems of communications that are being built around planet Earth. The next level of internet is probably the instantaneous internet based on this entanglement principles. Well, how this question evolved in the bio-psychical realm, so with bio-psychic beings like us human beings. So this is a list of a series of researchers. I'll not go through all of them, but I'll just mention two or three. Gurevich started with the onion root cells experiment, so doing communication at a distance between between cells and then also between human beings at a distance, at great distance, and then with barriers, as we also saw in the experiments that Lion McTaggart just presented. Until we arrive at some experiments related with also health, conducted by Luc Montagnier, which was Nobel Prize in Medicine, Hameroff and Stewart and Hameroff, which are the proposers of the OR theory, and Bandyopadhyay, which I personally got to know recently, which discovered the neural microtubules in human neuron cells, which could explain the quantum nature of consciousness. Consciousness was also a subject matter of great interest for David Bohm. He saw consciousness as a kind of aspect of a wholeness, so that behind all a series of interactions, of physical interactions, there comes up, appears this phenomenon we call consciousness. So the question we've been making in scientific terms is, can human beings, and more generally speaking, all living things, communicate at large distances beyond five senses and electrochemical schemes? So speaking with Charles Darwin, communication is considered to be the result of our evolutionary process. For Rupert Sheldrake, many of you have probably known many of his ideas. However, phenomena related with distant communication, such as the sensation of being stared at, has a book named The Sensation of Being Stared At, might be indeed a part of the evolutionary process, but they presuppose the existence of a morphic field, a morphogenetic field, as he called, a kind of collective memory every species has the right to access in a kind of resonance, of morphic resonance. Daniel Kahneman, which is psychologist and also economy Nobel, he presents his view on human skills such as intuition, which could be related with this kind of ability, once enhanced our survival chances, but in modern times have become misleading and untrustworthy. So exactly as Lynn McTaggart told us that at some point our teachers or our parents, they told us we didn't have these possibilities, we didn't have this psychic to say so powers, which indeed are part of nature, part of the very fabric of nature. And Anirban Bandyopaധ്യായ, which is an Indian scientist that I mentioned, and researcher from National Institute of Material Science in Japan, he discovered with his colleagues the microtubules inside cells, not only brain cells, but all cells of our bodies. And these microtubules, they work in the quantum level, and they are capable of transferring and processing information in quantum level, like a quantum computer. And he created then to prove his ideas, he created an artificial consciousness model, which has generated many industrial patents. Last but not least, I'd like to cite Antonio Meneghetti, which is an Italian scientist. He started with a clinical perspective using dreams, and he identified during the process of clinical activity a phenomenon he called semantic field, which is another theory to name the information field class of theories. An information transducer without energy displacement was this description he gave. So there is no energy transfer in the process. So what is being transferred is information, which connects all living things at a distance of space and time. He proposed a method to read these fields using the natural capacities of perception of our living body. So it's very connected with the ideas of Brandyapathy, but its empirical demonstration and mathematical descriptions should be a task of physicists. So the quest for information fields require an interdisciplinary approach, as we've seen. And to deal with that, this institute called Orion started then to establish a series of research protocols with these institutions that are interested in these thematics. So basically today we have four great partners in different areas of application. So CAPSIN, we have Dr. Ricardo, which will speak with us. He's the president of this consortium, academic consortium for integrative health. We have the International Institute of Invincible Rhythm, which studies consciousness and its applications, which is the president is Anirban Bandyopathi. At USP, the University of São Paulo, at the Faculty of Economy and Administration, we also have this partnership to study intuition as a phenomenon correlated with the flow of information in our living body. And most importantly, we can cite here Unicamp with the demonstration of the physical reality of this phenomenon. Here's just to mention, it was a more than 10-year research that has been published on intuition. Intuition revisited the high impact decision making empirical research. So it's more or less like saying, instead of saying that intuition lead us to mistakes, intuition is the basis of exact, precise knowledge, but it's typically lost by our heuristics of thought. So this is the conclusion that we got to, and by using an introspective approach, we can revisit intuition, not only as a concept, but also as a methodology to access this information, which is very useful, not only in business, but also in science, as very documented by many great scientists in history. Another research related with information transfer um, without energy involvement was conducted in the psychology realm in 2017, in which we used BioWell to measure psychologists and clients, and we got to the conclusion that there are uh, great evidence in favor of communication going on between psychologists and clients, specifically during the moments in which clients tell their dreams to the psychologist. Well, could this phenomenon be tested with distance and barriers? Should be just a kind of coincidence. And then, of course, inspired in the entanglement research, we search for the physical reality test. So we proposed research in partnership with Unicamp, and then I'll call my colleague Professor Pissolato to present the results of this research.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Jose. Yes.
Okay, okay. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank you, Dr. Koroktikov, to invite us to this conference. I'm gonna start with a question. Can human beings, and more generally speaking, all living things, communicate a large distance beyond 5 senses and electrochemical schemes? So this is a very, very difficult question to answer, but great scientists since ancient times, Democritus and Aristotle, gave attention on it. So curiously trying to understand the origin of night dreams. So night dreams, it was always the problem for everyone to understand this phenomenon. That's and the sequence of this in their lives. So the semantic field theory, as I said before by Erico, it was proposed by Antonio Meneghetti. It's an Italian guy. He was affirming that life itself provides all living things with the ability to communicate beyond the verbal and non-verbal level. So beyond the linguistic and the physiognomic, kinetic can communicate with one of the others in these 5 senses. So one aspect of this research is how to measure the electric field between two human beings. So it's very, very difficult to measure because the electric field is between two persons. It's almost difficult because in terms of the signal. So we decide in our research, we decide not to measure the electric field, but measure the signals between two guys in different places. And we propose to put one of them in a Faraday cage to realize, to try to connect this guy instead of no electromagnetic field inside of this Faraday cage. So our proposition was in this way. So I've got a good opportunity to work with Erico in his PhD thesis in 2020. And this research is about the information field hypothesis. And it's empirical test with human beings that is testing the possibility of transducing information with the best thing is in this idea. There is no energy transfer. There is no energy involved in this research, in this connection, this communication. So we should try to establish a repeatable and reproducible connection or interference between two human beings in a certain distance with Faraday shielding. So this cage Faraday, this Faraday cage was involved in a shielding one of these participants in order to guarantee that there is no electromagnetic fields involved in this connection. So in this way, we prove that no electromagnetic field are involved, and even the guy was inside of this Faraday cage. There is we can connect this guy when read a dream. So we've started with the Faraday cage built for conducting the first experimental trials. So my first Faraday cage was made by our technician, which was really awkward Faraday cage, but it was at the beginning to start. But our second Faraday cage was a professional Faraday cage in this research. So our experimental design was in our faculty. So our faculty was here, electrical engineer department, and another department, electronic department, was 250 meters. And we think that to put one guy in this laboratory and another guy inside of Faraday cage in this building. And there is for us at that time, it was far away, and it was work because people was sitting in a Faraday cage, in a professional Faraday cage ETS Lindgren series H1. So it was about 1,000 feet, around to 200 meters in a straight line. So in this experimental design, it was two kinds of variable, independent variable is whether one participant either reads a night dream from the other participant, or one guy in a laboratory could read a dream from the other participants inside of Faraday cage. So for this experimental group, we give the real dream of the guy who written a dream before to enter the Faraday cage. And another guy where was installed in another laboratory, when he will decide the time to read the dream. And both are connected, both are connected, measuring these signals. And this, I'm going to show the equipment that we were using at that time. So for a control group, we give to this guy not a dream that the guy written, but a computer manual. It was chosen for this proposal. So the dependent variables were several psychological signal measurement, and both participants during the experiment. We have used a lot of equipment for example, our interval for ECG, blood oxygen saturation, pulse rate, and the energy joules. And EPI, it's a bi-well device. So all these equipment are connected and synchronized with a computer, and the computer in time to see the moment when the guy will read exactly or a dream or a computer manual. So before the experiments, before experiment starts, the subject, the participants 1 and participants 2 had to write a recent dream in a piece of paper. So the design was like this. One participant was inside of this Faraday cage, professional Faraday cage, and another one was 5 minutes walk distance, and no mechanical and electromagnetic waves allowed. So both are are monitored by digital oximeter EPI GDV device by well, and are interval polar watched in the both participants. So the equipment used for data collection was this one: pulse rate and blood oxygen saturation with this equipment. And another equipment used was BioWell device, and with a cardioclip bracelet we use in another way that use BioWell. And the third equipment was a polar watch to record RR interval. So this BioWell device sample rate is one measurement or a photo every 5 seconds. So the instruments are, as I said before, it was blood oxygen saturation, RR interval, energy, EPI, and all these equipment are were connected to the laptop computer in an offline mode to not to have interference with synchronized times in both laboratory in all instruments. So it's very important to say that it's very synchronized and very important to do this. The illustration of heartbeat RR interval in milliseconds was shown in this graphic by the polar watch. So this polar watch measured this interval, this heartbeat interval that we call RR interval. It's measured in milliseconds. So it's our Faraday cage, the photo of our Faraday cage. It's a professional Faraday cage, was installed in a different laboratory in our faculty, as I said before, in the other building. So our experiment was performed with 5 couples, twice per couple. From 100 people, 40% were women and 6% men. From the total, 42 measurements were in the control group and the 58 in the experimental group. So for this control group, we not gave the dream to read, but we gave the computer's manual to read. So the couples were chosen preferable among people that live in a different seats and did not know each other. That's a very important choice, because if they know each other, there is some problem, so some information that could be exchanged in this way. So before any experiment were taken, subject or experiment subject 1, subject 2 had to write a paper in their dreams. There is no information that could be written. So dreams had to be as recent as possible, preferable from the night before the experiment. So that idea is to reinforce their relevance and their ineditic character. So the guy won. The subject 1 received a folded paper with instruction to read in content of freely chosen time between 15 minutes and 15 minutes after measurement started. So it's very important not to start our measurement from the first minute, but from the after 5 minutes, the guy could start to read in a freely moment, in a freely time. So it was important to say that, because it was a moment for us. It was this moment they start to reading. The guy outside needs to write the exact moment that he started to read the dream, and to write also the finished when they finish to read. So it's very important for us to compare these two times. So the data normalization was, before applying the statistical method, the data had to be normalized in terms of z-scores, coefficients of variation, but mainly in terms of time duration. So all this moment is very important for us, because before reading, and after reading, so we want to compare the experimental group and the control group in this all data normalization. So the question is, are there significant difference compared signals for subject inside or outside the Faraday cage, considering the moment as a factor? For example, before reading and after. This is the first question. It's a very important question, because we need to compare what's going on in a subject two that were in a Faraday cage when the guy one read the dream or a computer manual. So the second question was, do subject outside different during the moment of reading compare experimental and versus control group? So it's another question that we need to compare. If the guy outside it is affected by this moment when this start to reading a dream or a computer manual. So the third question was do subjects inside the Faraday cage differ during the moment of reading compared experimental versus control groups? So you see the second question outside, this third question inside of Faraday cage. So we need to compare these both groups. And the fourth, but not the least, do different instruments confirm or contradict each other? So this question we would like to answer before the experiments. So I'm gonna show you some graphics. We've plot GDV signal for a subject inside the Faraday cage, indicate the moment in which his or her dream was being read by subject A. You see here the dream starts at that time. You see the moment, exact moment that they read the dream. The guy was reading the dream of this guy. So this is the moment when we open the door of Faraday cage. You see the difference. So another graph that we want to show you, that's the average coefficient of variation for a pulse rate. We have a lot of graphs to analyze, but the most important I'm going to show you in this short time. But the graph of pulse rate on the top, this graph you see here. So the moment we start to plot in only 30 seconds before, and this we see the variation between the experimental group here and the guy was inside and the other guy was outside. You see the difference in the other one is the pulse rate of the guy of control group. So the coefficient variation is much higher for subject outside and much lower for subject inside the Faraday cage, precisely before reading transition. So this on the top, on the bottom, we can see the blood saturation SpO2 calculated with a standard deviation of 6 seconds showing before reading transition. So you see here the before reading transition, we see the difference between this is more stable. The control group is more stable than this experimental group. So another graph that represents the transition from the moment which happens at 0 seconds here. You see the 0 second. You see the difference between the guy outside and the guy inside of Faraday cage. And we plot here the mean square error from this guy experimental and control group, the difference between both. And you see here also on the right, you see here on the right the difference between the exact moment and the exact moment, the mean square error of the coefficient variation or the RR interval, to see the difference between two signals, control group and experimental group. Control group is this one and experimental group is this one. So this research activity, three major results. It confirmed that human dreams deeply affect the autonomic nervous system. So balance of subject, not only of those who dream, but also those who hear or read it. So affect both are monitored. So they affected the autonomic nerves in both sides. The guy who were inside of Faraday cage and another guy who read the dreams. So it showed as well the subject, the NAS balance can be modified at a distance with Bayer. So the Faraday cage was used to establish an empirical milestone in an area where experiments used to work only in the very special case. So it's affect NAS balance when the guy was inside, was using a barrier. So the third was the use of dreams create a natural bridge between neuroscientists, psychologists, spiritualists, and even materialists. So for the scientific community, we expected benefits are to formalize experiments that contribute to investigation of an old phenomenon using more physical or positivity approach. So it's allowing advance and understand this new region of scientific research. So to finalize my presentation, for future work, shall improve empirical design, including larger distance EEG and the enteric nervous systems, so measurement. So we need to design, to including for this experiment a large distance, as well as procedures to enable hearing instead of reading. It's very important because the guy, when they start to reading, maybe he has some anxiety, maybe he has some different way to read. So we think that the better way to do this research instead of reading, of hearing the dream in a random times, using a double-blind experimental design, increase the number of subjects for 4 digits. We use only 100 participants. So thank you very much.
Hello. I'm Ricardo Ghelman. I'd like to thank also the invitation for that important Congress and congratulate the name of Science, Information and Spirit. I'd like to share my presentation, to share our experience in from our consortium. That's the third in the world. You have the academic consortium in the North American, in Netherlands, and in Brazil. We are the collaborative network that joined several researchers, and in behalf of the Brazilian Academic Consortium, I'd like to thank. I'm also as a member of the executive director of the Virtual Health Library of Traditional Complementary Integrative Medicine of the Pan American Health Organization, we create a network of 17 countries. My background, I'm a pediatrician, and I did my postdoc in the neuroscience in the field of pain and anthroposophic medicine. And I am of the pioneers in the field of integrative pediatrics in Brazil. In the last 5 years, we're implementing that experiences. First of all, I would like to come back to the concept of the integrative medicine and health that includes a big change in the paradigm, and I'm comparing the focus on the person instead of disease as a big change, looking to the geocentric and the heliocentric change in some centuries ago. I believe that you are in a very important and crucial moment in our society, imposed from the pandemic, to look to the health in another way. I will talk about information in a broader way, and like to show here the distribution of publication in that field of integrative medicine and health around the globe. And nowadays, the North America and the East Asia represent 50% of the publication, Europe 22%, and in our region of Latin America, only 6%, and Brazil, probably 4% of this. Looking to the models of medicine and integrative health around the globe, you can compare the North American model that emphasize the natural products and the body-mind practices that are named of the especially meditation, yoga, and other approach that are not pharmacological. And there are a third important field to include that are the whole medical systems that has his own vision of diagnostic and the physiopathology and also therapeutic approach. That article from Eric Baas from Netherlands compare in general the difference of whole medical system and conventional medicine, and like to bring here the importance that we need to include in the training at all health professional at least 5 or 4 of these that until now only in Switzerland are included in the faculties of medicine in an obligatory way after the plebiscite in 2013, where all the population had the opportunity to vote. But these visions are very important, and one of them would be our conventional vision, more mechanistic way. Looking to the dimensions of the human health, one hospital in Germany used that 4 dimension to manage the hospital, and I'd like to propose here that the 3 dimension that usually you don't include, like vitality or well-being, emotional dimension, and existential and spiritual dimension, need to be included in a very intentional way. And vitality, it's very important to include in a more formal way, including physical activities, massage, nutrition, herbal and dynamized medicine, yoga, therapeutic touch, aromatherapy, and others that increase that level that are not measured easily, because quality of life don't measure the vitality. Our dimension level, it's also very important to include in the health approach, including all art approaches and also psychotherapy, movements therapy like rhythmy and floral aromatherapy. And perhaps the more important to this Congress is to include the meditation, biographic counseling, that means the self-consciousness related with the with the biography of each person, develop the clinical empathy and consider this in the care of the even our patients, and also to improve the resilience, the immunological identity, and the intentionality was one of the aspects connected directly with the spiritual dimension. The WHO, since 2014, recommend the research to allow the safety and efficacy of all that approach along all 6 regions in the globe. Then in Brazil, belong to the Pan American Health Organization. Russia belong to the WHO Europe, but we have 6 regions in the world need to include from that recommendation. In our policy from the Minister of Health, in the last 15 years, we include the 3 categories of complementary approach that I divided here in a more, it's just one category, but you can choose others. I put here the whole medical systems, the natural products, and the non-pharmacological therapies that include several modalities, more bodily or mind or body-mind approaches. In this last 15 years, all that approach are included in public health, basically in the primary care, and more than 30,000 teams, and more than 4,000 cities. That means 77% of the whole number of cities in the country have at least one modality included in a free way in our public health system. As I mentioned, was developed since an important congress in Nicaragua, organized from the WHO, a congress joined in several countries, and was created the Americas Network that engage nowadays 17 countries. And together with that network, we launched in 2018 our Brazilian Academic Consortium to promote that network. Our web page can be translated to Russian. Then, in honor of the organizers, I translate to you, and you can choose, search more than 1,500,000 publications in our field of traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine. And also, we became nowadays part or chapter of the International Society of Complementary Medicine Research, together with Canada, China, Korea, and Iran. Then the main project, it's the information, how to systematize the information that field. It's a very important aspect to allow as an international data bank that everybody in a free access could achieve the information. To organize this, we create several committees. One of the new committee, Dr. Erico Azevedo belong, that is the mental health and spirituality. And our first process was search in the country the numbers of post-graduation, master, PhD, and postdoctorate students that are studying this field. It's not so few, but it's growing, that process of survey. Our country, as you know, enlarge or have the responsibility to have inside one of the main important area, considering that 10% of the vegetal species belong to that area. It's a responsibility for worldwide to care of this. This is not in a good moment, but we are aware as scientists that the importance is to protect it, natural areas. Brazil have 5 biomas, and study some specific medicinal plants. It's a strategy to preserve. This is an example of passiflora that shows neoplastic action with apoptotic potential and antioxidant. Other field of importance is the research in acupuncture, looking to how several countries in the world look into the publication. Brazil is the 7th nowadays in publication specific to that field. That 2 areas of medicinal plants and the traditional Chinese medicine, we believe that are the main areas of research. And this is an example of collaboration, very important, inspired from patients with children with nephrotic syndrome, resistance of corticoids, that only with simple 4 weeks intervention of nutrition could achieve a complete change in the whole health perspective. Then this work was done in Harvard in cooperation with our University of São Paulo, and showed change in the measurements of the kidney function, and in historical results, considering even the reduction of the immunosuppressive drugs only after change in the alimentation, but together with intervention with happiness, because they invite circles group to play with the children together with the nutrition. It's our main field of publication. I mean, in the field of pediatrics. 2 years ago, we created a big congress engaging 10 countries, and we published that São Paulo Agreement, fostering a new vision of the health of children from the future. Our website are connected with the virtual health library from the Pan American Health Organization. I'd like to invite you to search in that website and look into the biofield. I did that search today. We can find 137 publications. From the request of the government to really implement that new approach in the public health system, 2 years ago, after that meeting and that request, we use that model from Canada, the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation, to map the evidence in the field of integrative medicine and all area of complementary traditional medicine. Then it was a partnership with the Pan American Health Organization. We create several maps, and I'd like to emphasize the resume. The evidence map can be searched in a way that in a design, we can look the level of evidence depend of each field. Sorry, that's in Portuguese, but this is example of meditation to pain, and putting the areas to each bowl, you can look to the publications. Then from that group of 40 researchers around the country, we started the first block searching that area of meditation, acupuncture, Chinese body practics, yoga, medicinal plants, Shantala, that's massage for children, reflexology and zonotherapy, and the first 888 systematic reviews shows the main outcome that we can offer as a benefit to the population. It's mental health, pain, and hypertension and diabetes. More than 85% of the systematic reviews show a positive effect, and I'd like to emphasize the acupuncture for pain, meditation to mental health, body Chinese practice to vitality and well-being, and yoga to social, mental, and spiritual health. This is open access, and from an important field of cancer in that first block, we choose and 51 systematic reviews showing that medicinal plants, Chinese medicine, Shantala, can help specifically to that outcomes. The main studies in cancer are to breast cancer, that can reduce the pain and fatigue related to chemotherapy and nausea and autotoxicity in general. That the 2 plants from Amazon seems from our first preliminary studies show an important effect to reduce the fatigue related to cancer, that it's Uncaria tomentosa, or unha de gato in Portuguese, and Paulinia cupana, that's Guaraná. The 2 plants from Amazon area need to be preserved because the mechanism of action was not well described until now, but they have a clinical effect shown in that clinical trial. And this is the in areas where we focus the evidence map, as you show. And now we are in the second block, engaged more 15 researchers, and you gather now 545 systematic review in that 18 evidence map. The importance of that evidence map, because it's in English and our languages, and our idea together with International Society of TCIM Research is to create a data bank, in a worldwide data bank, to allow everybody to search in that field of research. And the other important results, we create a knowledge system to to achieve in a simple language the results of that maps, and also to health professional to understand the publication in an easier way. Because the pandemic, it was very important to do the map of the coronavirus, and just to mention that our area of medicinal plants and our approach belong to the strategy published in the future of the treatment of COVID, together with the vaccination, that it's very important. And we did and published already the first map to COVID-19, showing that we have some interesting outcomes to immunological response, to manage the symptoms, and especially to mental health. And several interventions, especially from medicinal plants, from yoga, meditation, and other intervention, are very important to mental health. And I'd like to emphasize a medicinal plant, one plant that was used after the Chernobyl accident for children with pneumonia of repetition, and it was a reduction of 70% in 2000 after use or that injectable medicinal plant for that group of children. In the last weeks, the number of systematic reviews increased a lot in our field of integrative medicine. We have 44 reviews now and 14 clinical trials that we are not preparing guidelines to allow the population to know. That 2 systematic reviews looking to the depression, anxiety, and the isolation, social isolation, have important impact in the health worldwide. And it's very important to conclude that the loneliness have a direct impact in inflammatory stress and other psychoneuroimmunological realm, showing that the systematic view of the human health is very necessary now instead of fragmentation. One example is that study of gut-brain axis connecting the first phylogenetic brain connected to our gut and the second brain in our head that nowadays are looking the vision of the connection of the both. It's very important considering especially that 90% of the serotonin are not in the head but in the gut regions. Then depression, it's more connected to the first brain. That group in Netherlands, that it's Sino-Dutch Center of Integrative Medicine, I believe are looking to connect what means the future of medicine. That means to search from the ancient diagnostic that are more connected as constitutional diagnostic, for instance, from Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine. And the question is how to connect that way, ancient way to look the depression in a individualized format with the biome and microbiome and the genome, and how can we connect the past and the future in the medicine. One wonderful example is the mindfulness meditation organized from Kabat-Zinn, and some studies recently showing that only after 5 days of intensive program, you can increase our longevity measured from the chromosome change and also the TH cells increasing of immunity. The Ministry of India, the Ayush Ministry, proposed a guideline to COVID-19, and we translate to Portuguese, but it's very important that everybody have access of that guidelines. And connecting with my previous speakers, Erico and Pissolato, I'd like to mention a recent evidence map that was done from one collaborative group about biofield research. Looking to the several dimensions of the human being, as you can see from the left to the right, the mineral, the muscle, the nervous system, and the circulatory system, you can see from the solid, liquid, air, and the lipid to the heart. You can see that you need to look to the human being in that different way. We work together in that publication about putting the heart in the different way, instead only as a bump, but putting in the center of the endocrine system. And I would like to emphasize that this don't come from the Indian vision of the anatomy, but from the phenomenological study of phylogenetics and embryology of each glands that connect in a circle like a new way to see the endocrine system. Then the map about biofield healing, I'd like to conclude to share with you. It's very new. It's from last year. And several universities work together in a collaborative way to create that map that apply different biofield modalities to several primary outcomes. I'd like to mention in the right side the main use approach of biofield modality, that it's energy psychology, therapeutic touch, Reiki, healing touch, and others. And the main benefits, outcomes are anxiety, depression, mood, pain. That means very similar to in general area of integrative approach. And here in that map, you can see the number of patients included in each study. The therapeutic touch more 700, in Reiki more 1,400, and the other modalities. So this is important material to be searched to everybody. And in this next month, also we will launch the translation to German, Italian, and Portuguese, that important course or use of traditional herbal medicine and traditional approach to the patient care that come from an initiative of Technion University in Israel in connection with our Brazilian Academic Consortium and other institutions. Then my last slide is our intention. The intentionality seems it's an important word in that Congress, and the intention from the 3 academic consortium enrolled from US, Brazil, and Netherlands is to create, together with WHO, a federation including all research institutions that want to be part of a global movement fostering integrative medicine and health. Then I invite you to be partner in all countries that want, and we really feel like a global family. Thank you very much. And here my contact if you want to keep contact with our group. Thank you very much.